Urgent. A turning point on the front line. The occupiers are surrounded. Their offensive has collapsed. Thousands of losses, destroyed equipment, panic on the front. An FPV drone destroyed my vehicle number 8. The enemy is in shock. Special forces struck at the heart of Russia. The FSB has lost control. The system is breaking down. Drones are striking Russia's energy sector. Russia is out of fuel. The occupiers' fake has been shattered. The enemy has been destroyed. Ukraine is on the path to victory. This is not just a success. This is the beginning of a breakthrough. All the details right now. Welcome to Ukraine Today. I'm Solomia Dolik, bringing you the latest events. A turning point has come in Donetsk, where exhausting battles for the Dobropillia salient raged for weeks. A real chance has finally appeared. The Russians' offensive plans here have been broken, and now the initiative is shifting to the defense forces. This is not the final victory yet. Fierce battles for every house still lie ahead. But the main thing has already happened. The enemy has lost what they were counting on so much.
I don't know how many encirclements there are in the Dobropillia direction. But what can be said for certain right now is that the enemy's offensive plans in this sector have been completely broken. After all, just 1 or 2 weeks ago, the Russians were counting on being able to bring in reinforcements there and build on their success.
And now we have official confirmation. The turning point in the Dobropillia direction has translated into concrete results. The commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, reported that parts of Russian units have ended up encircled there. What's more, our troops have already liberated about 175 square kilometers. And enemy losses amount to over 3,000 personnel and nearly 1,000 pieces of equipment.
Thanks to the well-planned and courageous actions of our troops, part of the enemy's units ended up encircled. The total losses of the occupiers in the Dobropillia direction amount to 3,185 personnel, of which 1,769 are irrecoverable. The invaders have also lost 969 units of weapons and military equipment.
And while Ukrainian soldiers are pressing the enemy on the ground near Dobropillia, in the sky, the drone forces are achieving a resounding victory of their own. Pilots of the 59th Brigade destroyed a Russian Mi-8 attack helicopter with an FPV drone, which the Russian army used to transport personnel and cargo. The estimated value of the equipment is at least $6 million. Let's take a look at how it happened. When the enemy fails to achieve its goals, it tries to make up for it in its usual way, by spreading disinformation. Russian media began spreading false claims about alleged advances by the occupiers in the Yampil area, but Ukraine's general staff made it clear. Both Yampil and Kupiansk remain under the control of the defense forces.
In response to the situation, the defense forces have concentrated the necessary troops and resources to prevent these plans from being carried out. To support the offensive actions of their own troops, Russian propaganda outlets, as part of their information and psychological operations, are spreading false reports about alleged advances by the occupiers in the settlement of Yampil. This is yet another attempt to sow panic and misinform the population.
Russian attempts to advance on the front remain futile. Ukrainian defenders in the Huliaipol and Orikhiv directions have repelled 8 attacks by Russian units. 2 more clashes are still ongoing. Russian aviation carried out strikes, but our troops continue to hold their positions and deliver a decisive response to the enemy.
In the Orikhiv direction, Russian forces tried 5 times to advance in the areas of Stepove, Kamyanske, and near Andrivka, but were repelled each time.
A real commotion in the enemy's rear. Special forces once again demonstrated that the enemy is not safe even on their own territory. The warriors of the 73rd Naval Special Operations Center, together with the main intelligence directorate, set up an ambush in Russia. They destroyed a vehicle with 3 Russian soldiers and seized valuable trophies, documents, weapons, and even a motion sensor used by the FSB to guard the border. Let's take a look at how it happened. Ukrainian forces are once again striking at the very heart of the enemy. The defense forces launched a missile strike on the Karachev Electrodetal plant in Russia's Bryansk region, an enterprise that supplies electrical connectors for military equipment and aerospace. There were explosions and a fire at the plant, and the results of the operation are still being clarified. This is yet another signal. No rear area will be safe for the Russians. Crimea is now like the new Chornobyivka. The occupied peninsula is under constant and effective attacks by the armed forces of Ukraine. Precise strikes are destroying multi-million-dollar missile systems and unique radars. The state dachas of Putin's elite and the occupiers' military headquarters are burning. But how will Ukraine continue to liberate its Crimea?
The Russians are having problems in Crimea, and the further it goes, the more surprises await the enemy.
If we draw an analogy, Crimea, thanks to the efforts of Ukraine's defense forces, has turned into a kind of Crimea shooting gallery. It's a logical shooting gallery where the destruction of the Russian army, Russian occupiers, and accordingly their weapons and equipment is constantly taking place.
Ukrainian defenders have a clear understanding of where the Russian occupiers are located in occupied Crimea and are doing everything possible to drive them out.
There is active work going on in Crimea. The process of demilitarizing Crimea is ongoing. This is an integral part of the deoccupation process.
In temporarily occupied Crimea, there are increasing problems with fuel, water, and military equipment. Ukrainian strikes are destroying enemy bases. The Russians are trying to conceal the scale of their losses. This concerns ground, air, and naval operations that our defenders are successfully carrying out.
Today, the Russian military facilities in Crimea that were recently hit are those that truly pose a significant and undeniable threat, not only to the peninsula itself, primarily because they are strategically located there, but also directly and unequivocally threaten other sovereign territories of our country. This is equipment. Today, it is currently being utilized to launch devastating strikes with advanced missile systems against our sovereign territory. This is what allows the Russians to conduct extensive reconnaissance of our airspace.
The regular goal is the elimination of enemy air defense facilities, destruction of naval targets, and strikes on ground targets, including railways.
The air defense system, specifically located in Crimea, which is currently actively operating and diligently trying to repel Ukrainian strikes, though not very successfully, it must be noted, also functions as essential equipment.
Problems with supplies are growing on the peninsula, and the Russians' defensive positions are collapsing.
Work is also being done on those key points that will open the door to Crimea for us. In particular, the Kinburn Spit, the Tendrivska Spit, and in fact the territory of Crimea itself.
Almost every week, the destruction of Russian helicopters or air defense elements is recorded. This creates an atmosphere of fear among the occupiers and forces them to conserve resources. Ukrainian drones have even reached government dachas. On the night of September 22nd, explosions were heard in the Foros area. Russian collaborators reported that drones struck the territory of the Foros sanatorium. It was reported that 3 people were killed and 16 wounded.
It is quite likely that this boarding house was actually the meeting place for high-ranking officials, most likely from the FSB or possibly the armed forces of the Russian Federation. We have not seen any objective monitoring, as we call it, from the Russian side, showing the dead, the wounded, or civilian casualties. And that would have been the first thing the Russian Federation would do if it had really happened that way.
The Russians kept silent about the fact that at the time of the attack there were some very important guests at the sanatorium, though exactly who they were was not specified. On the sanatorium's public social media page, an announcement was posted stating that on September 21st, the Foros Hall restaurant would be closed for special service. But on all Russian news channels, they are showing the school next door instead. Most
of the damage was to the school's assembly hall, where part of the ceiling has collapsed. Just look at what's left of one of the walls. From the damage, it's clear that the drone flew in through this window. Now there are fragments scattered everywhere here.
The Russians tried to cover up their latest terrorist attacks on our country by spreading information about these schools, which had been closed for a day. There was nothing happening at the schools. This is what the Russians always do. But again, it's not about the school building itself. It's actually about the Terletsky boarding house with the same name, which is located across from the school.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Strike after strike. Ukrainian drones are hitting the enemy's energy infrastructure with precision. Each operation reduces the enemy's combat capability, and the fuel shortage is already being felt throughout Russia. But how is the Kremlin reacting to this, and why are their attempts to keep the situation under control failing? More on this in the next segment.
The Russian armed forces activity is grinding to a halt, and the scale of the problems is only growing.
We're not staying in the middle, not for the raccoons. Urgent evacuation is underway.
Just in the past few days, drones have attacked several Russian ports at once. In particular, they struck the Black Sea Fleet in Novorossiysk. According to Russian media reports, initially surface drones struck the port, and a few hours later the city center was attacked.
As long as there's no official confirmation of damage, they'll just call it a violation of safety protocols. Who's even smoking out there in the swamps, even at sea?
As a result of the attack, operations at the Transneft oil loading facility and the Caspian Pipeline Consortium terminal near Novorossiysk were paralyzed. At the same time, 120 kilometers away in Sochi, a threat was also reported. Tourists began to be evacuated from the beaches due to the threat of surface drones.
Don't stand in the middle, don't hesitate, evacuate immediately. Everyone get out of the water.
A commotion broke out at the port of Tuapse. There the oil terminal was attacked. This was also the work of surface drones. Videos have appeared online where you can hear bursts of gunfire and explosions, as well as see attempts to hit maneuvering objects on the water.
The drone approaches the pier and strikes, despite coming under fire, apparently from automatic cannons and machine guns, judging by the splashes around the drone.
As we can see, unsuccessfully, one of Russia's largest oil terminals for transferring oil to tankers has been hit.
The extensive damage is quite logical, indeed quite expected, after the recent devastating strikes on oil refineries and the complete destruction of critical installations vital to these essential plants. Of course, it is widely acknowledged that Russia is currently experiencing certain significant and notable difficulties with its essential diesel fuel supplies and also with its gasoline reserves. On top of that, the ongoing and impactful strikes on the crucial export gateways and vital infrastructure of those very same major oil and gas companies will undoubtedly also bring the Russians plenty of additional unwelcome and unpleasant moments and challenges.
The transshipment points in Tuapse and Novorossiysk together could export 2 million barrels of raw materials per day. And that means that even a single day of shutdown is a huge loss for Russia.
Russia finds itself in a very difficult situation, especially from an economic standpoint. It is highly dependent on these exports of fossil fuels in particular, lubricants, and a number of other products. The export channels for these barrels are used to obtain foreign currency revenue, which is then used to finance the war machine. Now, this is profoundly evident and undeniably clear. Not only is the export of these crucial products being significantly reduced by substantial percentages, indeed by tens of percent, but even the domestic production itself is experiencing a noticeable and concerning decline. This alarming situation could potentially trigger a cascading domino effect, a chain reaction where such precisely targeted strikes, although perhaps limited in their individual number, could, when considered in the thousands, ultimately lead to what Mr. Kramp so aptly called the paper tiger, simply and completely collapsing under its own weight and inherent weaknesses.
And there are also less obvious consequences. Each time after such attacks, Russians become more convinced that air defense does not protect them, but on the contrary, poses an even greater threat. The inaccurate fire of Russian troops led to the destruction of residential buildings, the destruction of several cars, and also caused panic among the locals. There are also reports of several fatalities. And the media are hinting that it was the air defense system because, for example, in Novorossiysk the day before, there was an order not to disclose the consequences of drone strikes, but everything is shown on television. This means that the burned cars and the hits on residential buildings are the result of the air defense system's work, not the drones themselves.
How do you assess the resilience and endurance of Ukrainian defenders on the front line? Share your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button under the video and follow the main news together with me. See you in the next segment.